Oh yeah. Yeah. Back like cook crack. How's everybody doing tonight? You're locked into the Louie T Network podcast. I, of course, am your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Lot to get to tonight. We are officially on Combine Week. And so things are really about to get hot and heavy when it comes to the NFL draft. The process really gets amped up. I know the motto and saying is the draft starts in Mobile for the Senior Bowl, but for me personally, things really become real when the combine hits. So we're on Combine Week this week, so we'll talk about some interesting topics surrounding the combine as we head into the festivities that are coming up this weekend. Cam Newton got into a little brouhaha, a little fracas at a 7-on-7 event. We'll talk a little bit about that. And I got a couple of non sequiturs that I just want to throw about. So, among other things, we'll get to some of everything. Y'all know how we do it, especially when it's late night Louie. Y'all are locked into the 399th installment of the Louie T Network podcast that starts now. The Louie T Network is powered by MusicHead University. MusicHeads, classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description. Who else could it be? For me, your man, Louie T. Welcome to the 399th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I, of course, am your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. I feel like a lot has changed since the last time we talked. One, I am now drinking, and I'm in the transitional phase, right? So I am in the transition of getting all plastic bottle water out of my system. And so the days of you seeing me drinking a bunch of these on camera are about to be non-existent. So, I'm a weird guy because I know things and I tell myself you need to do better. And then for some inexplicable reason, I'll just start doing better out of nowhere. No real transformative moment happens. No real aha or, hey, this event took place that spurred action or change. I just one day wake up and say, you know what? Time to make the change. And I've been knowing for years that drinking water out of plastic containers is some of the worst things that you can do because plastic containers contaminate your water that you're drinking. A lot of the plastic containers are recycled and they're going to be put through extreme measures. A lot of times, a lot of intensive heat, especially in the summertime. Water gets bottled up. They're on trucks, they're in crates, they're on pallets, and they are exposed to extreme heat. That heat forces the toxins to then kind of meld into the water that you're drinking. I know these things, and still yet I continue to drink bottled water. Well, I finally decided to make the shift. If you're not drinking water out of a glass container, do yourself a favor and drink water out of a glass container. Okay. I started that process and I had some, plastic containers still left. So I'm going to finish those out. And then afterwards, I'm done with that. Right. So that's a change that took place. I watched Jack Reacher season 1. First of all, why didn't you guys tell me Jack Reacher was so badass? And now I've seen the movie, obviously, so I should have known. I know. And I've been meaning to get around to it. and me and my wife were just perusing, doing that thing that we do. And I told you that sometimes we'll just be going around. We won't actually watch anything. We'll just start saving stuff. And we were sniffing around Mr. and Mrs. Smith because I was told by several of you, including my guy Derek B, that was a really good series. I hadn't watched the movie with Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie, so I was like, do I need to watch the movie first in order to really enjoy the show? And he was like, yeah, not really. If you have watched it, it gives it more context. But if you watch the show first and then go back and watch the movie, then it'll give that more context. Whatever the case may be, long story short, you don't have to watch the movie in order to watch the show. So we were sniffing around that. But I don't think we were really looking to get into it. And then I stumbled on Jack Reacher and I was like, I'm really in a badass mode. And, my wife is always down for some ridiculous amounts of violence. That's her thing. So it was an easy sell. And sure enough, he did not disappoint. And we went from Friday watching the first, it was, I think, 8 episodes in season 1. We went from Friday, I think we knocked out the first 2 episodes. Saturday, we knocked down the next 4, and we had 2 left in season 1. And then Sunday, we knocked down the final 2 episodes of season 1. Now we have season 2 left. Season 1 was excellent. Can't wait to start watching season 2. And it was really, I love shows that force you to think. You think you know, then you don't. But in any event, Jack Reacher was outstanding. So I enjoyed that. And then there's the Cam Newton situation, right? The ultimate F around and find out situation. So, and we'll probably end up talking more about it, but I think people forget that Cam Newton is 6'5", 240, right? I think people think it's a game. And I know he's not playing ball anymore, so maybe he's not 245 anymore. Maybe he's 230. Maybe he's 225. Maybe. He's a big dude, though. And first and foremost, times are changing, man. Like, when did we get to a place where people are comfortable enough trying to jump a guy like Cam Newton at a 7-on-7 event? Like, what are we doing right now? And, like I said, social media is a dangerous place, man. It's a dangerous place to be because people always are chasing clout. I don't know what happened. I don't know the details. I would assume that Cam Newton's next episode of his podcast is going to be crazy. It's going to do massive numbers because I would assume he's going to talk about what transpired. Now, if there are charges being filed and it's an open investigation, maybe he won't be able to elaborate and talk about it. But if, cooler heads prevail, everybody kind of goes their separate ways, there's no charges being filed, et cetera, I would imagine that he's going to go into great detail and lengths about what happened and how all of that started. He might not even know like how everything really came about, but that shit is dumb, right? Like, here is this former NFL quarterback, Heisman Trophy winning quarterback, national championship winning quarterback, former number 1 overall pick. He's played in a Super Bowl, former league MVP. This guy has so many accolades. He, people, how many times, like, am I missing something with Cam Newton? Is he a bad guy or something? Did I miss something? Like, look, I'm not telling you he's a saint. I don't agree with a lot of the shit that he says out of his mouth, but I haven't gotten the sense that he's a bad dude. But every time he's at an event, it seems like somebody's got some smoke for him. Remember the kid that one time where he was at like his own camp One of these little kids, little snotty-nosed 14-year-old punks decided to try to come for him, and he had to check him real quick. Like, what is going on here? I don't really fully understand why we feel like it's okay to go after somebody the stature of a Cam Newton. I don't get that. And once upon a time, because look, I equate Cam Newton having his camp that he has, or him going out here and being a part of a 7-on-7, which, if you want me to be honest with you, 7-on-7 for football has turned into like the AAU of football, right? 7-on-7 is like what AAU basketball is to basketball for up and comers in the game. Like, everybody's playing 7-on-7. It's turned into a life of its own. Like, you can make some real serious money running a 7-on-7 camp and having your athletes kind of grow up in that environment. You can really make some money doing 7-on-7. It's really blown up here over the last 7 years or so. But to feel like you can get into it with Cam Newton, that's crazy to me. That would have never happened 10 years ago. We never heard about LaDainian Tomlinson getting into it with somebody at a camp or at a 7-on-7 or at anything for that matter. Or you just pick a player, any player. I've been to countless events, that these guys give back, or they go out and they take some time out of their schedule to go and be a part of some of this stuff. And nothing ever happens. This shit is crazy to me. But at the end of the day, Cam Newton is still Cam Newton. And I don't know what happened, and I don't know all of the particulars, and I always try to steer clear of choosing a side when I don't have all of the facts, because I'm well aware that Cam Newton is no angel, right? And he's definitely got a slick tongue, but he didn't put his hands on anybody. And last time I checked, it's a free country. You should be able to say what you want to be able to say. I mean, again, as I've always said, you can say whatever you want. You're not free from the consequences that come from saying whatever you want, but he didn't put his hands on anybody. What are we doing right now? I'm floored that it got to that. And then we saw a lot of people talking about his hat not moving the entire time. Like, they tried to jump him. He put one dude in a headlock. He stiff-armed the snot out of another dude. And if he really wanted to get physical and violent, if he really woke up and chose violence on that day, those boys would have been in some trouble. But you know what would have happened, and this is why he's smart, they would have sued the draws off of him, and they probably would have won. That's the kind of country we live in, where they can start the fracas, but because he's got money, he would have been the one coming out of pocket for this foolishness. His hat didn't move, but I don't know why so many people were surprised that his hat didn't move. If you've watched Cam's podcast or you know about Cam Newton, first of all, he has his own hat line. That's number one. So people are like, whomever hat he's wearing, they need to be pushing this right now because this is a great opportunity. It's his hat. It's Cam Newton's line of hats. Just like he has a line of cigars, he's got a line of hats. This is something that he's been doing even since his playing time, his playing career. Those hats, the reason that it didn't move in particular, though, is those hats, he made them specially with a hole at the top for his dreads. So his dreads go up through the hat. So that hat wasn't going anywhere because the dreads were going to essentially keep it in its place. So it was crazy to see him in a physical altercation and the hat really literally never moved, though. That was wild to me. Like, I could understand it not falling off his head, but could it just slightly be tilted to the side a little bit just to show that there was a little bit of an altercation? Nah, not at all. I can't wait to hear what he has to say about it. And that shit's wild to me. I'm glad nobody got hurt. Like, I'm glad nothing crazy happened, because all it would have took was one person out there, excuse me, with a stick, and it could have got real ugly quick. That's all that needed to happen was one weapon be out there, and shit could have got shitty real quick. It could have got real funky out there fast. I'm glad that none of that took place, and we can kind of laugh and joke about aspects of that situation now because nothing crazy happened. But we a week removed from people losing their lives at a Super Bowl parade over nonsense. And I told you I didn't want to really get into the specifics of that because I didn't know the entire story. But I said, I bet you it was a couple of people arguing over some shit. I didn't know how old they were. I didn't know all of the, the particulars that we know now, but I knew it was over some old pedestrian, stupid ass shit. Anyway, so it was an interesting weekend, to say the least. But one of the most interesting things that I read over the last, let's call it 48 hours, was what we're going to start the show off with today. And that's the gem dropping session. Let me drop this gem on your melon. Open your mind, let your conscience be free. You're now rolling with your man, Louie T-double-E. Let me open you up. Get you thinking a little bit. So I was looking at some stuff so let me say this. I just finished all 2 hours and 13 minutes of Daniel Jeremiah's conference call pertaining to the combine and his pre-draft combine breakdown conference call he has with the media. So NFL Network's lead analyst does this every year. I think this is the 7th or 8th year in a row I've listened to the entire conference call. I go all the way back to when Mike Mayock used to be doing this thing, and Mike's would be a marathon. I feel like Mike's was like, one of them might have been like 3 hours long, but Daniel's was 2 hours and some change. And he goes through all the prospects essentially that are at the combine. You can ask whatever questions, and usually they got all these media members and they got their specific questions about the team that they, write for or cover, or, and it's a lot of, college writers and things of that nature too. So you'll get somebody to ask a question that works for the Michigan Tribune or some shit like that, right? Some paper in Michigan that they cover the Wolverines. Or one person asked about South Dakota's guys that have a chance to be drafted. And then somebody asked a Canada. We get a Canada question almost every year. So anyway, that was informative. And shout out to Daniel Jeremiah for doing it yet again. But as I was going through all of that information, kind of taking in everything, prepping myself for the combine, I noticed that we're starting to get information about who will and won't participate. And I've been talking about this the last couple of years, about how a lot of these big name players aren't partaking in the combine anymore. And, people get bent out of shape about it. I don't. I used to at first. I used to be upset because the NFL is trying to make, like everything else, they're trying to really monetize the combine and really make it into a spectacle, one that you need to see. And I always tell you guys every year, I watch this so you don't have to. If I didn't have to watch I wouldn't. It's a waste of time. And every year, big names decide, nah, I'm good, right? I miss the days of guys like Calvin Johnson saying, nah, I'm not going to run. And then he gets there and he says, oh, you know what? Let me get your cleats real quick. I'm about to go out here and blaze this jank real quick. Let these dudes know how fast I really am. Like, I miss those days. We're far, far removed from those days. The top two receivers aren't doing anything at the combine. Caleb Williams has already said he's not doing anything at the combine. So, the quarterback position probably won't be as entertaining as it could be. That's not what I want to talk about, though. And that's not what bothers me. What is interesting is Marvin Harrison Jr. I don't know if you guys heard this or not. Marvin Harrison Jr., wide receiver of the Ohio State Buckeyes, has decided that he not only will not participate in the combine, but that he won't do anything at his pro day either. And he'll just continue to work towards being ready for the start of the season. And at the surface of that, I was like, well, does he have an injury, or like, is there something wrong? And they were like, no, he's fine. He's working out in Columbus, and he's just not going to partake in anything. And I said to myself, that's interesting. Now, the combine will always have players that need the combine. There will always be players that are not only willing, but want to be a part of the combine because that's their opportunity to shine light on their skill set. Like maybe they didn't have the most productive career. Maybe people aren't sure how fast they really are, or, how good of an athlete they truly are. This is an opportunity for them to put evaluators and scouts and, coaches and front office personnel on notice. Like, hey, I don't know if you did enough work on me, but here's a reason that you need to go back and check. And if what you see on tape isn't representative of what you saw today, come talk to me. Holla at me. I can fill in the gaps for you. The combine will always have relevance. May not for some of the big time names, but it'll always have relevance. So I'm not worried about that. Here's what I am worried about, though. It was just a few short 6 or 7 years ago, however long Christian McCaffrey's been in the league, where players were playing in that final bowl game. It's just a few short years ago, until Christian McCaffrey made one decision that kind of sent ripples through college football, and it hasn't been the same since. He decided, I don't need to play in that last bowl game. My team's not in contention to win a national championship. What's the point? I'm going to get ready for the draft. Now that's commonplace. It's common practice. You expect that. If your team's not in the playoffs, the college football playoffs, if you don't have a chance to win a national championship, I'm not playing in that final bowl game. I'm just going to start getting ready for the combine. Well, Marvin Harrison Jr. electing not to do the combine or the pro day, is potentially going to set a new precedent. Now, you got to be in his category, and it'll take a special individual to be able to try to pull off what he's going to attempt to pull off. And he's going to pull it off, because what are you going to do? Not draft Marvin Harrison Jr.? You would love to know how fast he truly is. He doesn't care that you don't know how fast he is. Go watch my tape. You'd like to know how high he jumps. I don't care that you don't know how high I jump. Go watch the tape. You'd like to know how many reps of 225 he can get up. You don't need to know how many reps of 2 1/4 I can get up. Go watch the tape. See how strong I am. So you're not getting a 3-cone. You're not getting measure. I mean, they may get some measurables. They may measure his height and, arm length and hand size. They'll probably get all that stuff at the combine. But for him to not do anything at the pro day either, so there's no extracurricular activity that he's performing other than speaking with teams and going through the medicals, which is what the combine was initially designed for anyway, is really interesting. I don't really know how to feel about that. Obviously, it's not going to change his draft stock. Arizona Cardinals are still probably going to take him at number 4 overall. And he knows that. And that's why he's not going to participate in anything. And that's why he can get away with it. And I don't think it's a big deal now, because how many players can truly get away with that? But what it says to other guys is, if he can do it, why can't I do it? What's stopping Caleb Williams from just saying, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to pass on everything too. What's stopping Malik Neighbors has already said he's not working out at the combine. Same thing with Caleb Williams. What's stopping them from saying, nah, I'm not going to do anything in my pro day either? Now, again, if you're Caleb Williams, you probably can't afford to do that. Malik Neighbors may be able to get away with that. He's not a quarterback. He's not going number 1 overall anyway. What does he have to lose? Rome Odunze probably was going ahead of him anyway. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. Whatever the case may be, he ain't going ahead of Marvin Harrison Jr. And whether he's the second or the third receiver off the board, probably doesn't make that much of a difference. Of course, you'd like to be ahead of, your counterparts at that particular position. You'd like to go as high as you can, but which you would think working out would help strengthen your case. But for Marvin Harrison Jr., he can't get any higher than the 4th overall pick, because picks 1, 2, and 3, while they're not officially spoken for, they're going to be quarterbacks, all 3 of them. I find it hard to believe that the Bears don't stay at 1 and take Caleb Williams, that the Commanders trade out of 2 or you don't take a quarterback at 2. And we know either the Patriots are taking a quarterback at 3, or they're trading that pick away and allowing somebody to come up and take a quarterback at 3. All that was said to say this: 3 quarterbacks are going 1, 2, and 3. So the first possible spot where you can go away from quarterback, Marvin Harrison Jr. is in play at 4 to Arizona. He can't get any higher than that. I don't think any team is thinking to themselves, well, he didn't work out, so we're going to take Rome Odunze instead, the guy that already said he's going to work out at the combine, and give himself a chance to. And you know what? Good for him. This is an opportunity for him to potentially stake his claim as one of the best players in this draft class, and one of the best receivers in this draft class. And maybe he may win some people over. If he's not going to perform at the combine, this is your stage now. You go out and shine. Be a star. Take over this thing. That's what opportunity has been presented to you. I don't think it's going to change anything, but I'll say this. I wouldn't be shocked if 3 years from now, we look back at Marvin Harrison Jr.'s decision to not do anything pre-draft as the launching point for a number of players making that decision moving forward, and there being no repercussion for them not doing anything. I mean, what's really interesting now, I told you this, and I don't know if there's a direct correlation here, but I'm telling you, the game has changed. And some of it for the better. Like Caleb Williams not hiring an agent. I think Lamar Jackson kind of set precedents there. Like, why I'm going to give my money to somebody else when I feel like we're capable of handling it ourselves? Hopefully you know what you're doing, right? But what I read from Marvin Harrison's perspective is that you pay a lot of these agencies and these places that are helping you prepare for the combine and your pre-draft workouts and things of that nature. You're paying them hundreds upon thousands of dollars, right? 6 figures is what I read in an article. Up to 6 figures that you're essentially shelling out for all of the things that you'll be doing in preparation for the combine and your pro day and getting ready And obviously that's not free. It's not on the house. Somebody's taking and footing that bill, and you got to pay them back. So by bypassing all of that stuff, just working out at Ohio State with, coaches that you probably don't have to pay anything to, or if you are, you're not paying the kind of money you're paying to some of these agencies and groups who specialize in getting, players ready for the combine and pro days and things of that nature. Maybe it is a smart move from a financial standpoint. But I'll just say this and then we'll move on. NIL deals have changed the game forever. There's no going back. And, Daniel Jeremiah said something that was really interesting to me on his pre-combine conference call with the media this year. He said that one of the reasons players failed in the NFL, and I told you one of my favorite 30 for 30s was the 30 for 30 called Broke. I told y'all I'm a weirdo. I used to watch that documentary every night before I went to bed. I would fall asleep like 5 minutes in, but that was the thing that I would watch to put me to sleep. And some nights I'd stay up and watch the first 30 minutes. I'd stay up 43 minutes in and fall asleep. But I used to watch that. It was so good. I used to enjoy it that much. And you would hear these incredible stories about how guys blew through their money. And, I didn't watch the video, but I saw on my YouTube timeline one of those nightcap episodes, which is Shannon Sharp and Chad Ocho Cinco talking about how first of all, we know how cheap Chad is. And, Shannon seems to be somewhat financially and fiscally responsible as well. And so they were talking about how they can't believe Adrian Peterson is broke. And we already knew for a long time ago that he had blew through his money, which is why he was trying to play till he was 80. And so one of the things Daniel Jeremiah talked about was he talked to a lot of teams, and one of the common threads amongst the front offices that he talked to about failed, draft picks and guys with all the talent in the world who just didn't cut it in the NFL, a lot of them couldn't handle the amount of pressure and all that came with having money. A lot of dudes got money and they switched up. All that determination and drive that they once had to be great, they got what they ultimately was looking for, what they were working towards, which was that payday. They got it. Now they got this money and they're not the same dude. And a lot of guys can't handle that. And he said, the thing with NIL deals now is that dudes are getting paid in college. So you're able to see who can handle it and who can't. And it gives you a better handle on what you may potentially be investing in, because everybody, obviously some more than others, clearly, but everybody's getting their hands on something, getting their hands on a little something in college now. The better player you are, the more hyped up you are, the more stars you have next to your name when you're coming out of high school, the more likely you're going to be able to get your hands on some of that bread, while you at college. But I also look at it from, and I think that's a positive, but I also look at it from this perspective. If I'm making all of this money, one, I don't have to leave school. And that's why this year, I think it's the least amount of underclassmen that we've seen come out in the draft in quite some time. But that's to be expected now. You still got dudes on these COVID hardship waivers. I think we're still weeding out the final batch of those dudes. And then, but I look, I'm not going to lie to you. If I really enjoy college and I'm making 6 to 7 figures, why would I leave? Why? Because it's not a job yet. The minute you leave and turn pro, it is officially a job. And by having these players make money, they're able to make decisions that they just weren't able to make before, i.e. not working out at the combine or not even deciding not even to work out at their pro day. We'll see if this has ripple effects moving forward and if other players decide to try to pull this down the road. You got to be in rarefied air to get away with not doing any kind of pre-draft workout of any kind. It's one thing to fan off the combine and say, yeah, I get at y'all at my pro day. That it's not uncommon. We've seen that go on for years. But to say, nah, not working out for you at the combine or my pro day, and I'm not hurt. Deal with it. Watch the tape. Figure it out. That's next level. And again, not everybody can do it, but if you can get away with it, are you going to try to get away with it? And I don't know what that says about the player. You know, once upon a time, teams would use things like this against you. When you decide not to participate in the combine, is he afraid of competition? Teams would use that against you once upon a time. No more. Those days are gone. So we'll see. It's an interesting tact, interesting ploy. He knows he's going 4th overall, more likely than not. He knows he's a top 5 pick, so he can get away with that. Anyway, I digress. So let's get to social media maneuvers. I'm a midnight marauder. Y'all know what it is. Y'all know how to get at me. But if you don't, here's how you do it. Use the hashtag LouieTLive to have your comment read on the air if it is pertinent, and just about anything goes here. So as long as it makes sense, it's coherent, we're probably going to get to it at some point. But to jump to the front of the line and ensure that your comment is read, the best way to do that is to super chat. And so we'll get to those first. Super chats supersede everything else. And then we'll get to any comments that are out there if they are pertinent, as I've mentioned. So let's get to the comment section, and we will start off social media maneuvers with my guy, JP John Perez. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. JP writes, as long as Washington gets one of the top 3 QBs, I'll be happy. Don't do something stupid like trading down for JJ McCarthy, aka Alex Smith 2.0. They won't do that. Trust me. You don't have to worry about something crazy happening, JP. We're in a position to take one of the top 3 quarterbacks, and that's exactly what they're going to do. That's exactly what they're going to do. Anything else other than staying at 2 and taking a quarterback, to me, would be an utter shock to the senses. I think it would be as long a shot as it is for Washington to win the Super Bowl. Whatever those odds are, I think the lowest odds might be like 3,000 to 1 or something like that. That's probably what my odds would be for Washington to trade out of 2. The odds are a long shot. I just don't see any way possible that Washington doesn't stay at 2 and take one of the top 3 quarterbacks in the draft. You don't have to worry about them doing something crazy. This isn't the last regime. You don't have to worry about stupid shit happening anymore. Even things that you may not agree with, there's an easy way to justify it now by saying, hey, I'm going to just trust in this new group and see what happens. They haven't let you down yet. So you can't say that it's the same old Commanders. You got to give them a chance to see if it is, in fact, the same old Commanders or not. Or is this really, truly different? But they're not going to do anything stupid. So you don't have anything to worry about, JP. I can promise you that. Christopher McLaughlin, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, Chris, thank you for the generosity as always. Truly do appreciate you. My guy, Chris, writes, hey, Lou. What's up, Chris? Says, hope you and the family are doing well. Likewise, as always, hope you and the fam are doing splendid. Says, need to finish Jack Reacher. 2 questions. I will. I can't wait to finish season 2 so I can talk to you all about it. I can tell you season 1 was stupid, man. It was so good. It was so good. And there were so many twists and turns just when you thought you had it figured out. And one of our favorite things to do is try to guess what's going to happen next. Okay, is this person about to die? Like we swore up and down that his ex-military buddy, the female, we swore she was gonna die. She didn't, and that was great. Looks like she's gonna be a part of season 2. I don't know for how long, right? But she's gonna be a somewhat of a part of season 2. It looks like. We swore up and down that the detective was gonna die. He didn't, obviously. It was a great ending to what was a crazy roller coaster, because we just all assumed that the villain was the owner of the company, right? We just assumed that he was behind all of this, and of course his counterfeiting ring and all of the stuff that he was into, he was pulling all the strings. And for him to get his throat slashed, you're like, wait a minute, what in the hell is going on? So that was a big curveball. They assumed that the guy that was helping them move the money was dead, and he wasn't. That was a little bit of a curveball. We all assumed that he was dead. So yeah, there were a number of curveballs. It was excellently done, and can't wait to see season 2. It says 2 questions. 1, with the higher than expected increase in the salary cap of 30.6 million, how do you think Peters will pursue free agency and why? And the second question is, how aggressive are you in free agent getting edge or cornerback and why? So I think we were already going to be aggressive in free agency anyway. When I say aggressive in terms of turning over the roster. They were going to sign a lot of players, I believe, to begin with. We had the most cap space in the NFL. They were going to use it. However, with this increased bump, I think this was probably 15 to 20 more million dollars than they were expecting on the cap. I think a lot of people expected the cap to be somewhere around the 240, 245. The highest anybody would go, I think, was like 245. I think most people thought 250 maybe, but that was a stretch. I think most people thought it was like 245. And then it ends up at 260. So, I mean, that's a massive increase. So, by virtue of that, you're going to see some teams that were in cap hell that didn't know how they were going to, they were going to figure it out, obviously, but they didn't know how they were going to figure it out. They were going to have to make some tough decisions. They're not going to have to make as tough of a decision or 2 or 3. Now they can kind of go about it in a more meticulous, methodical, and not so off the cuff manner. Whereas a team like Washington, who was going to be aggressive anyway, now you're even allowed to be somewhat more aggressive. And maybe that big time free agent that I told you guys we weren't getting, maybe you are able to get that big time free agent now. Maybe that exists for Washington all of a sudden after this increase in the amount of cap space available. I don't know if this necessarily changes Adam Peters' approach to free agency, because I always, all along, told you I expect them to sign a bunch of free agents. I don't think a lot of them are going to be big time needle movers for a lot of you, but I expect them to do a lot of, house cleaning, and then going out and acquiring a number of items that they're going to put up around the new home, right? So that's what I'm expecting. But maybe you get a little bit something more high price now that may not have been on the menu before. We'll see. As far as what they're going to pursue, I think you're more likely to see them go after edge rusher in free agency than you are in the draft. From what I've been told, and I can't confirm nor deny this, the draft isn't super deep at edge rusher. There are some edge rushers that you can get early, but it isn't like a steady diet. Like last year, it was edge rusher galore. There were so many guys, and you could get you something for the first like 4 rounds and feel really good about it. That's not the case this year. Cornerback is a little bit different. It's a deeper cornerback draft class, but a lot of the guys are like nickels, which we need one bad. So that's really good for us. I don't know if they have to do anything crazy in free agency at corner. They could probably get some stuff in the draft. They still got young players that they remember. Tariq Castro Fields, and I don't really know if he'll, truly get a chance here, but he was drafted by the 49ers. Adam Peters was a part of that draft. We took him off of their practice squad. So he obviously felt some type of way about him. Maybe he didn't feel as good about him and wasn't as high on him as, say, John Lynch was, or some of the area scouts, or some of the people that had influence that, ultimately made that decision. But he probably liked Tariq Castro Fields somewhat. So we still got a bunch of guys on the roster that we don't know what they're ultimately going to do with them or how they're going to go about maneuvering the roster. But corner, I don't think is as dire. With this coaching staff, I think they're going to come in, they're going to assess these players, see what they have. You have Manuel Forbes, who you spent the first round pick on last year. You have, look, we don't love Benjamin St. Juice, but he's still on the contract. They may be able to get more out of him than the last group was able to get out of him. I talked about some of the young guys that still exist that were hanging around, like Tariq Castro Fields, et cetera, et cetera. And then I think you can draft a nickel. You may be able to get a undrafted guy, or you may be able to, and I wouldn't be shocked if they signed a free agent or two, but I think the emphasis will be more so on edge rusher than corner. I think you can get somebody in the draft or two in the draft, whereas edge rusher might be a little tight for Washington, because I think the first couple of items that you probably have to focus in on are quarterback, and then you probably got to get yourself offensive tackle. And then I've long said that my first 3 picks, if I'm Washington, and I don't give a shit what you do in free agency, this doesn't change how I feel about these first 3 picks. You got 1 in the first round and 2 in the second round. If you're making all 3 of those selections, the first pick would be quarterback, the second pick would be offensive tackle, the third pick would be an edge rusher. I'm not wavering on that. The only thing I might do is flip-flop tackle and edge rusher if you feel better about the edge with the first pick in the second round versus the second pick that you have in the second round. That's the only thing that I might do is flip-flop edge and tackle. But either way, that's how I would address my first 3 picks: quarterback, tackle, edge rusher. You can flip-flop edge rusher and tackle if you like. Go with the edge rusher first if the value is greater with that first pick than it is with the second one. But that's how I would attack those 3 picks for Washington to start the draft off. But, free agency, I think, is going to allow them to go out and sign an edge rusher or 2, right? I think I'm going to go out on a limb and say this. I think right now our most notable free agent this offseason will be an edge rusher. I'll say that right now. The position that we spend the most money on with one player, I think, is going to be edge rusher. And I've heard that the Bears are sniffing around Curtis Samuel. I don't think he's going to be back. I don't think he's going to be back. Somebody's going to throw some money at him. I told you, somebody's always eyeballing your stuff. If Curtis isn't back, you got to draft a receiver. That, or you got to go sign somebody. You probably got to go get you a receiver if you don't bring back Curtis Samuel. And again, I would be upset if they don't bring Curtis back. I like Curtis. I would like to have him back, but if Curtis is going to demand money that they don't think he's worth, and again, they didn't sign Curtis. The last regime did. So they don't have the ties to Curtis. So we'll see what they ultimately decide to do. But I think you're more likely to see this team be aggressive in the free agent market at edge rusher than you are at the cornerback position. John Perez, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, not NFL related, but how do you feel about these baseball free agents still being unsigned during spring training? Most of them are Scott Boras clients. Well, we always know Scott Boras clients are always going to kind of push it to the limit because Scott Boras is always going to try to get the absolute most for his clients. A lot of teams hate dealing with Scott Boras, but that's just the nature of the beast. He is the guy, the preeminent agent in Major League Baseball. And a lot of times his guys don't sign for, like, they always take it to free agency. You rarely get one of his clients to sign before they hit free agency. And it's normally a long process with them because they're trying to get the very most that they can get out of these baseball teams. And a lot of times those tactics work. And so we'll see. We've seen Bryce Harper signing. Remember how long it took him to get signed by the Phillies? Like, this is not new. This is not new. But his guys, at the end of the day, usually find homes, and very lucrative ones at that. Let's see. Let's get to the comment section. See what you guys have to say. All right. John Wynn says top 3 NFL players to be in the Walter Payton Man of the Year award next year. Josh Allen for the Bills, Joe Burrow for Cincinnati, and Geno Smith. So all 3 quarterbacks, you think. It's usually not 3 quarterbacks. You might get 1 quarterback in the mix. I think the last 2 winners, let's see. This year it was, I think it was my man from the Steelers, Hayward, if I'm not mistaken. And the year before that, I don't think it was a quarterback. I think the last quarterback to win it might have been Dak Prescott, I think. I know quarterbacks do win it, though, because Russell Wilson's won it too. But I don't know if you'll see 3 quarterbacks be finalists, like top 3. Wynn also writes, Madden 25, new gen, just released the details about the NFL commentators in the game this summer. I'm super excited. I haven't played Madden in well over a decade. I used to be a game head, but y'all know that already. I told y'all that as much. I can't even tell you what Madden it consists of, like how it looks, how it plays. None of that. It's a damn shame. Let's see. HTTR Carson writes, we need a 00 on this is your Giannis Antetokounmpo year. Take that you was spitting. Chief said, So you're not getting a 00 from me. That was me telling Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, this is your chance, bro. You'll never have a better shot than this. Joe Burrow was out, who I thought would have been in the AFC Championship had he not gotten injured. Aaron Rodgers was out. Had they just had competent play, their defense was so good. If they had just had competent play at the quarterback position, not Aaron Rodgers, who had won the previous 2 MVP trophies. Had they had just had competent, or excuse me, had won the previous 2 before last year. Because, excuse me, Mahomes won it last year, and then Lamar won it this past year. But the 2 previous years to that, Aaron Rodgers won it. They didn't need MVP Aaron Rodgers. They just needed a guy that wasn't a jag. So you got Rodgers hurt, no Joe Burrow, and the Chiefs' offense was not the same. It was not the Chiefs' offense that we'd come to know and love. The stars were aligned. Just all they had to do was make it to the Super Bowl. They would have won it. I think whomever came out of the AFC was going to win the Super Bowl. I really truly felt that way. And they couldn't do it. This was their year. This was their chance. I don't back off of that. Red Wing 01 writes, your wife likes ridiculous amounts of violence. Try The Boys if you have Prime Video and haven't seen it. Fantastic show. So I think I told y'all about this already. I stumbled into The Boys. And there was this one episode. I forget what it was called, but it was like a porn episode. I was like, what the F am I watching right now? This shit was so gross. Like, it was some really nasty shit taking place in this episode. I can't go back to that show after that shit. I'm like, if this is what I'm being exposed to, I'm good, man. I'm a pass. It was some dude on dude action. It was some pretty nasty shit. I was like, yeah, I'm good, man. So I think we're going to pass on The Boys. I can't go back after that shit. I can't unsee what I saw. I don't want to see anymore. So I think it was like the Orgasmo episode or some shit like that. I'm good, bro. Thanks. I'm a pass. Let's see. Red Wing 01 writes, I get people not vibing with Cam's personality. I don't. But I've realized the dude has been given unscrupulous amounts of hate and he doesn't deserve it. Look, when you're as outspoken as Cam Newton has been, and this has been the life of his career, he's always been outspoken, and you don't always agree with him. I know I don't always agree with him, but he's entitled to his opinion and we can agree to disagree, but there's never any place for disrespect. That's always, there's a line that you don't cross. And I always feel like we can always agree to disagree as long as there's no disrespect involved. And for some reason, people are comfortable disrespecting Cam Newton, and I can't understand it. Why? Why do you feel like it's okay to disrespect Cam Newton? For what reason? I don't know. It's crazy. Max Custom Kick says, man, YouTube doing you dirty, man. I had to check your channel to see if you went live. Didn't get the notification. Man, that's been going on for years. People been telling me, man, I ain't getting no notification from YouTube. That's never gonna change. YouTube is they're just wishy-washy with the notifications. Either you get it or you don't. It's crazy. It really is. And I've been saying for years, well, I need to be better at making sure everybody knows. And I say I'm gonna do this, and then I do it once or twice, and then I go back to not promoting this shit. And if you catch it, you catch it. And you know how many times people are like, man, I can't believe I missed this show live. And I'm like, damn, I wish you didn't. We had a lot of fun, especially these podcasts. A lot of times where we just go off the cuff and start talking about random stuff. They come back and they watch it and be like, yo, I would have loved to have been a part of that conversation. And I'm like, so yeah, no, I totally get it. YouTube be jerking folks without question. see. Smitty says, I needed this one for my overnight shift. Well, there you go. Love that I could be a part of that and help you get through that overnight shift, Smitty. Appreciate you chiming in, and I hope you enjoy the show. Derek B writes, that Jack Reacher series makes you feel like Tom Cruise was miscast badly. So without this show, I felt like Tom Cruise was poorly miscast in the Jack Reacher. Now, he did a good job of playing the role, but that role was clearly specifically made for a big, strong, tough guy, and that's not Tom Cruise. Now, like I said, Cruise, his demeanor and the way he was able to play the role was spot on, but that role was clearly made for a big, strong, tough dude. And that's not Tom Cruise. He's the opposite of Jack Reacher. So I think the show is a little bit more realistic in that regard, because even watching a movie and you would see the shit that Tom Cruise would go through. Like, who's afraid of a dude that's like 5'9", a $180? Who's afraid of that guy? You know, you can't come up talking cold hard. Like the first scene in Reacher, right? The very first episode, he gets off the bus. He's walking into the diner. He sees a dude mistreating his girl, right? And he looks over at him, and the dude starts mouthing off like, mind your business, yada, yada, yada. And Reacher looks at him like, bro, you really want this smoke? And he doesn't say a word. You really want this smoke? And he just stares at the guy, and the guy realizes real quick, this dude is about 6'4", 6'5", 285. Do I really, really want to do this? And without saying a word, the dude apologizes and gets in the car. Like, you're not doing that if Tom Cruise is the one staring at you at 5'9", a $185, right? So yeah, he was absolutely miscast in that regard because of his size. But when you talk about the demeanor and the way he played the role, I thought he did a good job. But that role was clearly made for somebody that was big and physical and hulking figure, right? So absolutely, I couldn't agree with you more. That shit was crazy. Let's see. RHS Chess, right? Oh, wait, got a super by my guy John Perez. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy JP writes, you really want a good show to watch? Go watch The Rookie with Nathan Fillion. It's about an older rookie police officer. Also, do you like the idea of signing one of these veteran running backs? So The Rookie, I've seen that. That's on cable television. I think that was on ABC, if I'm not mistaken, the network that it came on. It looked okay. It didn't look like something that I myself would be super entertained by, but I've seen enough of the previews and enough of the episodes to know that I don't think that would be more my speed. But as far as these veteran running backs, I mean, me and you have talked on a couple of shows that we wouldn't be too upset if the team went after a guy like the running back that was with the Eagles last year that came, DeAndre Swift. We wouldn't be upset. You said it. I said it. I wouldn't have any issues if they looked at DeAndre Swift and said, hey, you'd be perfect for this Cliff Kingsbury offense. Why don't you come aboard? And he's still relatively young. How old is DeAndre Swift? Got my mobile device right here. Can look this up. My guess is DeAndre Swift is probably 20. Let's call him 26, maybe 25. I think he's a relatively young dude. DeAndre Swift is 25 years old. He just turned 25 in January. So he's young. Like, I wouldn't have any issues if they said, yeah, we want to sign DeAndre Swift. And it's not going to cost you a whole hell of a lot to sign DeAndre Swift. You're not going to have to pay him, 10, 11, $12 million a year. You could get DeAndre Swift, I believe, on a 6-7 year $6-7 million a year contract. So you could probably sign DeAndre Swift for a 3-year, $23 million contract, like a shade under $8 million a year, right? I think you can get him for that kind of money. So, and that's not a lot. So I could see them doing something like that, but more likely than not, you can get yourself one of these little speedy backs in the draft somewhere. Because again, we got 2 physical backs. We need a speedy back, somebody to offset those guys and give us a change of pace. That's really what we're looking for. I'd be shocked if they went out and got another guy that looks and plays like Brian Robinson Jr. or Chris Rodriguez Jr. I'd be shocked if they did that. All right. I think we were right here. RHS Chess. Thank you. RHS Chess writes, come on, Lou. Don't trash our beloved Extremely Buns. Man is just trying to make himself marketable by saying he had opportunities in the NFL. He didn't mention anything about OC or head coach. And that was my point, was he was extremely vague. And I think he did that intentionally, because if he would have went into the context of what those opportunities actually were, he would have essentially been telling us that he didn't get any opportunities to be an OC. Again, excuse me, by the time the season was over, any team could have requested an interview of Eric Bieniemy for their vacant offensive coordinator position. And there were at least 8 to 10 vacant offensive coordinator positions this offseason. How many new head coaches did we have this year? 8, right? There were 8 new head coaching jobs, if I'm not mistaken, when it was all said and done. And then there were probably another 2 or 3 offensive coordinator changes. The Bears, I know for one, didn't change head coach, but did change out their offensive coordinator. And there might have been another team out there that did the same, right? So at least 9 job opportunities for offensive coordinator were available in the NFL. And then the Buccaneers lost their offensive coordinator to the Panthers. So they needed a coordinator. So that's 10, right? So I guess you could keep that number at 9, because if you hire an offensive-minded guy, more likely than not, he's going to call the plays, et cetera, et cetera. But still, I said all that to say this. There were opportunities, and 5 guys, I think 5 or 6 of the coaching hires were defensive guys. So there were a number of opportunities this year for teams to ask permission to request an interview with Eric Bieniemy, and nobody did. Nobody did. So I'm not buying that, and look, he didn't say it for a reason. And yes, he probably did have opportunities, but as I mentioned in that video, they weren't to be an OC. So what are we talking about? Like, don't flex and then don't want to talk about the stuff that you're trying to flex on. Like, we know what you trying to flex, but we know the truth. The truth is you were about to have to go back to Kansas City on some senior offensive advisory type position bullshit, or you're going to have to go somewhere and be somebody's running backs coach, and that would have been a downgrade for you. That would have been steps backwards. So don't try to pull that card. Don't try to flex, because we know the truth. You can try that shit on fans who didn't watch the shit you did in Washington this past year. You can flex on them. Don't flex on us, because we know the truth. That's all I was saying. RHS Chess writes, Commanders posted a 40-minute video of all the interviews with the assistants. Man, they all seem excited about the staff and the franchise. Made me cry. Well, I told you I had watched all the videos already. So all they did was they mashed up all of the interviews that, they had with the staff members. And they had already put most of them individually on the team website. So I'd already watched all of them. They just mashed them up and put it into one big video, so you didn't have to chase all of the videos around. So good for them on that part of putting it in a nice, neat package so you could consume it without having to keep clicking on different videos to watch. But That's what allowed me to break it all down. Was, you know, watching all those videos. There were a couple that were floating out around YouTube of some independent beat writers and companies that had sent beat writers to the, you know, media day scrum, and they had, you know, videos of their own that they posted on their, and, you know, respective YouTube channels and things of that nature. So I told you the biggest takeaway was the respect that everybody had to a man for Dan Quinn, and then, you know, the genuine excitement, enthusiasm, the energy was just ridiculous. I've never seen anything like it as a fan of this team. Uh, I told you, they give me the sense that failure is not an option. I've never felt that way before. Like, Quinn is like, bro, I probably won't get another shot after this. If this doesn't work, I'm done. Right. I prayed for this opportunity. I prayed for times like this. I got it. And now I'm not going to blow this. That's the sense I'm getting from him. I could be wrong, and it could go sideways, and he could flame out. But I'm just telling you the vibes that I'm getting right now. I've never felt this way about a new staff coming in. The diversity, the different backgrounds everybody's coming from, and everybody talking about putting that together and making this unique plan that they're going to try to put in place to be the most effective offense, defense, special teams, etc. that they can be. I'm excited, and literally the title of my video says I'm pumped, and I am. And after listening to them, I was even more pumped. Right. So I got another super. My guy JP, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. JP writes, I also think Washington will go after Eckler again. They tried last year, but the Chargers' asking price was too much. You know, I'm so lukewarm on Eckler because of his age, one, and two, he was so banged up last year. And so there's a lot. I feel like the Chargers used the shit out of Austin Eckler over the last 5 years to the point where there's a lot of tread off those tires. He's probably his age, even though he didn't run it a ton. He caught it a lot. I guarantee you, I'm going to look right now. I guarantee you there's 100 catch season in there for Austin Eckler. We're talking about a running back too. Keep that in mind. I guarantee you there's 100 catch season in there somewhere for Austin Eckler. Like, they may not have handed it to him, but boy, he was catching the shit out of the football. You put those two things together, and I think there's way more. So look, he has. Let me see. I'm gonna pull up. You're gonna pull it all up. So right now, let me see if he ever had. Yep, 2022, he had 107 catches in 2022. So he's had 556 targets in his career, 440 catches. So look, just because you didn't catch the ball doesn't mean you ain't get hit. 556 targets. He probably got hit on about 500 of them joints, right? You know, he caught 440 of them, but there's another 116 that he didn't catch, and he probably got hit on at least 60 of them joints that he didn't catch. Then he's got, in that same time frame, he's got 990 carries. So we're talking about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years. So 7 years, 1,500. So you're talking about over 1,500 touches over a roughly 1,500 touches in a 7-year span. You're talking about over 220 touches per season for a guy that's not like an every down back. That's a lot of touches. That's a lot of tread off the tires. Now, he's been highly productive, and he may have some tread left on the tires. I don't know what his asking price. Remember, he was upset because he wanted to be paid. I don't know what his asking price is and what the going rate for a 27, 28-year-old Austin Eckler type of running back is, but I don't know what the price tag is, but I don't know if I'm willing to pay it. Not when there's a DeAndre Swift out there. Not that he's the most healthy, spry back either, but he's 25. Who knows? We'll see what they decide to do. That's an interesting name to look out for. But again, if you're going to go Austin Eckler, you might as well just get somebody in the draft. That's how I feel about that. But we'll see, right? We will see. Let's see where we at now. We're right here. RHS Chess writes, Tavita said it's great to be with a staff that have no ego. We know there were some egos on the last staff, especially Eric Bieniemy. When you come in and you say this is the playbook and y'all gonna do it my way and there's no other way and there's no flexibility and there's no compromise, that's ego. Is that a shot at Extremely Buns? I believe so. Absolutely. And his ego of sticking with the scheme and not prioritizing players' strengths. And he kind of mentioned that, in the presser, right? He kind of talked about that without pointing any fingers or mentioning any names. He kind of said that. That was one of his talking points was building the offense around the players. So I think that was like a veiled shot at what wasn't being done a season ago, and we all know who was pulling the strings there. So, what I thought about? This is stupid. I probably shouldn't tell this story because it's really not relevant, but I'm gonna do it anyway because I do a lot of this shit on the podcast. So if I can't do it here, where can I do it? Right? I was thinking about Tavita Pritchard, and one of his quotes from his presser was that, who wouldn't want to be here, right? How could I not want to be with this group? It's like he said it, his words were, it's like an all-star cast of coaches. Who wouldn't want to be a part of this? And what I thought about with him in particular was, there's a scene in Scarface, the movie Scarface. I know some of y'all, this goes right over your head. Scarface was in 83. So yeah, I wasn't even born in 83, but it's Scarface. You have to go back and watch, right? I've seen it a million times, and I think most of you have as well, but some of you have no idea what I'm talking about. Anyway, one of the scenes towards the beginning of the movie, it's a long movie too, but one of the scenes at the beginning is where Tony takes over, right? And him and what is my man name that he his boy that he ends up killing for being with his sister? Why can't I think of his name? They go in there and they sit with the big boss, essentially, and they talk with him. And then when it's all said and done, they kill everybody in the room. And it's one dude that they don't kill, right? It's this one dude. And this dude thinks he's dead because they offed everybody in the room. Manolo, that's his name, Manolo. So Tony and Manolo go ham on everybody in the room, clean the joint out, and it's one dude left that they didn't kill, and I forgot his name. And they thinking they were gonna kill him, and Tony looks at him. He says, "Hey, you want a job? Let's call him Eddie. I don't remember what his name was. Hey, Eddie, you want a job?" Eddie's like, "Hell yeah, Tony." Right? and then Eddie picks up a bottle. Eddie's shaking uncontrollably because he thought they was about to kill him, right? He takes a sip of that shit, trying to calm his nerves, right? That's how I saw Tavita Pritchard, right? After the staff was fired and everybody's getting pushed out of here, he's like hoping that they don't off him, that they don't replace him, and that he gets to stay on staff. And when Dan Quinn goes to Tavita Pritchard and says, "Hey, Tavita, you want a job? I'm gonna be the quarterback's coach." Tavita's shaking and shit. Hell yeah, Dan, I want to be the quarterback coach. That's how I was thinking about Tavita sticking on, because You remember there were only like 3 holdovers from the last staff. You know, Ryan Kerrigan, Bobby Ingram, and Tavita Pritchard. I may be missing 1 or 2 guys, but there weren't very many holdovers. I think they were the 3. If I may be missing 1 person, but there weren't many holdovers from the coaching staff. So I don't know why I thought about that when I thought about Tavita Pritchard when he said that, but that's the first thing that popped into my head. Anyway, don't mind me. Red Wing 01 writes, skipping bowl games, watering down the Pro Bowl, now skipping combine and pro day. I get most of it is to avoid injury. Their bodies make millions, pause, but it gives entitlement vibes. A lot of this is on the instruction of their agents. Now, some of these dudes aren't hiring agents anymore, like Caleb Williams, for instance, not hiring an agent, but he's not working out at anything but his pro day. And again, I get it, because for him, he can only go but down. You know, the more he exposes himself, the more opportunities he opens himself up, for criticism and for people looking to poke holes in his game and, you know, kind of knock him down a peg. You give them more opportunities to do that when you go out and you perform. And if it's not up to speed, if it's not up to par, then it gives people a reason to, you know, talk and to formulate opinions. And so if you only give them one thing, which is scripted, you're in control, you set up the sheet and you know exactly, like, you're in control of all of that. You're in control of your pro day. You put together how many throws you're going to have. You put together how those throws are going to be done. You're throwing the receivers that you know their cadence and their rhythm and how they like the ball and the, you know, all of those things. You're in your own environment. You're sleeping in your own bed. They do so many things at the combine to try to fluster you, to make you uncomfortable. They do that intentionally. The combine is not supposed to be easy. They're making it tough because they want to see how you respond in that environment. Why subject yourself to that if you don't have to? I mean, I get it. In theory, it's not a good product for the fans, but we don't matter in the grand scheme of this. We don't matter. It's not our livelihood that's at stake here. They got to make calculated decisions that are in the best interest of their future. And I know you know that, and most of everyone out there understands that. But it sucks for us as consumers of the product, because we want to see the best of the best. You know what Mike Mayock would always say is, I just want guys that want to compete. And he would get upset at the guys that, you know, and he wouldn't say it, but you could tell in his voice flexion and the things he would say, you could tell he was frustrated at the guys that, you know, didn't compete. And he would always laud and praise the guys that did decide that they wanted to compete, because they didn't have to. They could have taken the same route that some of the guys that don't come out and compete took. And instead they decided, no, I'm gonna come out here and I'm gonna showcase my skills. So this has always been my thing. If there were a rash of injuries, I'm gonna knock on a little bit of wood. If there were a rash of injuries at the combine, and, you know, because look, I've seen a guy go down. David Ajabo went down at his pro day like 3 years ago, 2-3 years ago. We see it from time, but it's rare. Guys pull up with hamstring injuries. And I don't think I've ever heard of a guy like tearing his ACL or blowing out his Achilles at the combine. It just doesn't happen. Again, I'm gonna knock on some wood, right? I don't want to see that happen to anybody. Hell, when a guy blows out his hamstring or it tightens up on him, we hate to see that, right? You never want to see a guy go down at the combine. But that's not what's happening at the combine. So I get it. You mitigate risk when you don't go out and perform. You mitigate the risk. That's what you're looking to do this time of the year. The only thing that can stop you from profiting at the highest possible, at the maximum ability that you have, is getting injured at this point. You've done all the work. You've laid the foundation to get paid. And the only thing that can stop you from cashing in now is getting injured. So the more times you perform, the more chances you have to get injured. I'm aware of that. It just sucks as a consumer. That's all. Just sucks. I don't even know if that's them being entitled as much as it's evolution. Once upon a time, you didn't have a choice. As time progresses, you have more options available to you. One of those options is to not do it. Once upon a time, if you didn't do it, that was held against you. You would not dare sit out of the combine. You needed to prove that this is why someone's going to take you with the #1 overall pick. It's evolved into, for some of these guys, it's evolved into a risk more than it is a showcase. And the smart thing to do is to limit all risk. So, sucks, but I get it. Got another super chat. This one is from my guy, Frank McLaughlin. Thank you for the generosity, Frank. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, my guy. Frankie, baby. My guy, Frank. Says, Lou, aloha. Aloha, Frank. Says, love the QB series. You know my PTSD has got me going again. Uh-oh. He says, I'm worried that Jay Daniels last year is similar to D. Haskins last year's in college. Great wide receivers core, high-powered offense might mask some of their flaws. Shaking my head, the PTSD is real. So the biggest difference between the two is the amount of experience. I remember me and Derek B having this conversation every bit of 4 years ago, right? About Doin coming out. And we both thought he shouldn't have come out, but Derek B was even more adamant that his dad needed to step in. He did his son a disservice by letting him come out after 1 year of being a starter. He wasn't ready, and he wasn't. And he was immature, and I think the whole bowling alley paying, making people pay, and then to come in for the draft party, and the whole clothing line that he had, and the league done messed up, all this stuff. Like, I haven't met a guy, I haven't seen a prospect at the quarterback position that made a public statement that the league done messed up succeed. I haven't seen that yet. Now, Peyton Manning told Indianapolis that they would regret and rue the day that they passed on him, and that he would F them up every time he got a chance if they passed on him. He did that behind closed doors, though. I know that Josh Rosen said that every team that passed on him was going to pay, and that they made a mistake. He's not in the league anymore. And Dwayne Haskins said the league done messed up. And unfortunately, God rest his soul, he's no longer with us. But he was in the backup capacity. Who knows? He might have got a shot in Pittsburgh. I was really rooting for him to get an opportunity to see if he could resurrect himself in a much better situation with the Steelers. But obviously that never came to fruition. But he wasn't ready for the NFL. He was immature. Clearly, COVID proved that. Like, he needed to be mature. He needed to put the team first, and he couldn't even do that. Right? So Jaden Daniels started in over 50 collegiate games. So that aspect of him, having that one big, and it's true, he had one big season, okay? But there's other seasons, other bodies of work that speak to his skill set and what he had done. He just took it to another level, right? There were seasons, 22 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, 22 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Like, he had good seasons before. This wasn't none of them looked like 40 over 4. None of them looked like that. So he's capable. He's fully capable. And I don't think him and Dwayne Haskins are the same. I more so would put Dwayne Haskins in the same conversation with those guys like Mitchell Trubisky and those guys that had 1 year of starting experience that didn't pan out in the NFL. And that's not what Jaden Daniels has. But we got PTSD at the quarterback position because we haven't, I've said this a bunch of times. We haven't had a franchise quarterback since Joe Theismann, if you're being honest. I thought Kirk Cousins was a franchise quarterback and we should have kept him. You know how I feel about that. But if you're being honest, we haven't had a true franchise QB since since Joe Theismann. He snapped his leg in half back in '85. So what the hell are we talking about here? That's the shit that we've been dealing with for well over 40 years now. With 95, 05, 15, we're pushing towards 40 years, 4 decades of being in the quarterback wilderness, essentially. With the occasional sprinkle here or there, like Mark Rippon that wins you a Super Bowl, or Kirk Cousins, or Brad Johnson's 1 year in '99. You get, or Robert Griffin III's 2012 rookie season that was electrifying. We get that one little sprinkle every now and again, but we haven't had sustained success. Like, I look at organizations like Green Bay and I just marvel at this shit, because they don't know what it feels like. Unless you're of a certain age, you got to go back to the Magic Man, before they had trouble at the quarterback position. They went from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers to potentially Jordan Love, if he is what we think he is. They don't know what it's like. Over that same time frame, we've probably had 8 million quarterbacks. So we all have PTSD at the quarterback position. We just want them to get it right. I told you, I'm not going to sit here and argue with any fan about who they should choose. I'm not going to do that. I don't care. Just get it right. Okay? It's one of these 3 dudes. And shout out to my guy, Joe Rockhead. He brought up an article to me, or it might not have been an article. He might have just kind of done the research himself, but we had a conversation about, I got to say, it was probably like 6 to 8 months ago, when we were talking about Bryce Young and CJ Stroud, quarterbacks going 1 and 2 in the draft. And he said, anytime quarterbacks go 1 and 2, and I guess you could probably extrapolate that out and go 1, 2, 3 in the draft, only one of those dudes is going to pan out. And we just saw it happen in 2021, right? We get 1, 2, 3 in the draft. Trey Lance not with his original team. Zach Wilson won't be with his original team after this offseason. And Trevor Lawrence is the only one that panned out. And there's Jaguar fans right now that aren't sure about Trevor Lawrence. And I still think that's crazy. That reminds me of Bills fans who didn't believe in Josh Allen after like year 2 or 3 or whatever it was. But he's going to be the one that pans out of that group. And if you look at it, if you go back and you look at history and you look at those quarterbacks and you go all the, we don't even have to go any further back than 15, right? 15, 1 and 2. Mariota or Winston went 1, Mariota went 2. Neither one of them really truly panned out. But at least Mariota's played in the playoffs, I guess, right? If we were to say one of them remotely succeeded, it'd be Mariota, because he's played in playoff games before, right? The next year, 2016, Goff and Wentz went 1 and 2. Clearly, one of them worked out, the other didn't, right? Both of them looked like they had a chance to really work out. And then Wentz made a sharp wrong turn, and Goff looked like he wasn't going to work out. And then he resurrected his career in Detroit, and he was 1 game away from the Super Bowl. And he's played in a Super Bowl before, right? So he worked out, the other one didn't. And you could keep going, right? And so that has me worried. And then last year, Stroud went 2, Young went 1, and that was what prompted Joe Rockhead to bring it up. And we had the conversation, and he was like, bro, one of these dudes, if the numbers, and I actually did a podcast episode about it. Off of that conversation me and Joe Rockhead had, I had a podcast off the strength of that. And I said, if the numbers check out, one of these 2 dudes isn't going to work. And Bryce was awful. I told you, I'm still a Bryce Young supporter. I still believe in him. And, I told you Daniel Jeremiah did his pre-combine conference call, and he said about Bryce Young, on that conference call that evaluators believe in the 3 Ps, especially when it comes to young quarterbacks. And this is the first time I'd heard of this. He says they need protection. He said, and obviously he had one of the worst offensive lines in football, and I talked about that last year. He said they need playmakers. We all said when they traded away DJ Moore, we said, and then they traded away picks so that you could, compensate for losing him. And then they doubled down on the nonsense by drafting the kid out of Ole Miss, and it turned out to be a disaster. Now, he still may turn out to be a good football player, but that's not what they were looking for. That shouldn't have been what they were looking for. But nonetheless, and then you need play calling. And obviously they went through like 3 different play callers last year. 2-3 different play callers last year. So he's like, all of the 3 Ps were a disaster for him. Hopefully this year they're able to clean a lot of that stuff up, get him some playmakers, get him some protection, and then Dave Canales can come in and solidify the play calling. So I believe in him still, right? But it was rough. And Stroud was so good. Like that was one of the best rookie performances I think most people have ever seen before. I've never seen anything like that before. Like the stuff he was. NFL rookie quarterbacks don't come in and lead the league, not rookies, lead the league in yards per attempt, completion percentage. That's not what rookies do. He wasn't just nickel and diming his way down the field. If history repeats itself, one of those two isn't going to make it. And right now it doesn't look like CJ Stroud's the one that's not going to make it. I'm not speaking that on Bryce Young, but let your imagination run wild. I say all of that to bring the conversation full circle. There's going to be 1, 2, and 3 at the quarterback position this year. Chances are one of these guys is going to be good and the other 2 aren't. I'm hoping that 2 out of the 3 are good and 1 isn't. It'd be great if all 3 of them were good. But the likelihood is, if the trend continues the way it's been going, somebody's going to be good and the others won't. I just hope the dice finally comes up right for us this time around. We'll see. But we all got PTSD, man. We all got it. JP, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy JP writes, you didn't hear this from me. He says, you didn't hear this from me, but I think we're going to be in the mix for Josh Allen and Danielle Hunter. Plus, I think Curl will be extended. So there's already a rumor out there that Cam Curl already has his deal in place, his extension. I don't buy that for 1 second. It was 2 tweets that they were using it as examples of why, and they were both, ridiculous stretches. Like, okay, you're really going to think he got money because he went and spent money at Dick's Sporting Goods? Come on, man. What are we doing right now? But at the end of the day, I do think Cam Curl is a guy that, if the money's right, could be back. I think he would fit in what they like to do defensively. He's so smart. He's such a smart football player. I think he could play for anybody, but especially a Dan Quinn coach defense and a guy like Joe Witt Jr., I think would absolutely love what a guy like Cam Curl brings to the table. So same thing I could say about Kendall Fuller. Kendall Fuller, I think he would be really good in this defensive scheme. With his ball skills, his smarts, awareness, I really think he could be good. I hate that, Kendall's getting up there in age, and I don't know if they'll have him back. I think Kendall still has good football left in him. I would love to have him back on a 2-year deal and see what we can get out of, and see if we can't squeeze that rag dry. But I think we're going to be in the mix for, I don't think Danielle Hunter. He's old. He's 30 years old. I just don't see Danielle Hunter being the guy. But Josh Allen, it's going to cost you, though. May cost you a lot. It ain't going to cost you a little, but it's going to cost you. Are you willing to pay? First of all, I expect the Jacksonville Jaguars to slap the franchise tag on them. I had this discussion with you guys last week on the podcast. A lot of these dudes that you're fawning over, you're drooling over, they're not seeing the light of day in terms of free agency. Now, will there be a secondary trade market for these guys? The conversation right now surrounding T. Higgins is that there may be a trade market for him, right? Because the Bengals have shown this to be their move to franchise tag a guy that, wasn't a first round pick. They did it with Jesse Bates III, and then they franchise tagged him, and then the next year they let him walk. They might be doing the same thing with T. Higgins, but somebody comes along with a lucrative deal. They may not turn it down. They may just take the picks, because you could be saying, look, bringing him back for 1 year for $21 million or whatever the wide receiver tag is, gives us a shot to run it back one final time with Joe healthy, with Jamar still on that rookie deal. You may have to pay Jamar this offseason. Who knows? But Jamar still on a rookie deal. This gives you the best shot one final time to run it back with all of your pieces in place to see if you can't get it done before you have to disband some of this offense and kind of go about it in a different direction. So maybe they just go and remember, like sort of like our situation with Chase Young, we could have gotten something for Chase Young more than a third round compensatory pick that we kept talking about getting. We ultimately realized, had we traded him before, we would have got more than the third round that we got from San Francisco. But he was more important. Him and Montez Sweat were more important to Ron Rivera and Jack Del Rio and all of them trying to keep their jobs and trying to win. And I didn't blame them for that. They were more important to them trying to win than trading them away for assets that they wouldn't be here to spend. It wasn't until this thing got away from them after the Week 8 loss to Philadelphia that the front office stepped in, ownership and Eugene Shin and everybody said, okay, we're going to take the keys from you now. Okay, you're no longer in control. We gave you a shot. We gave you 8 weeks. You failed miserably. You gave up 40 points at home to the Bears, and we're down 27-3 at halftime. So we're taking the keys from you now. You went to New York and scored 7 lousy points and lost to the Giants. So I'm taking the keys from you now, and we're going to trade both of these dudes, right? Do the Bengals say we can get more for him now, or do they risk not getting anything more than a third round compensatory pick because they want to chase a chip? You got to weigh your options and decide what's best for the short term and the long term, and which one is more important. If I know the Bengals like I think I know the Bengals, they're going to try to run it back one final time. Damn with the draft capital that they may be able to get for trading him away. They haven't won a Super Bowl in their franchise's history. Joe Burrow is fully capable. We've seen that when he's healthy, AFC championship or bust. If he's healthy, you run it back one final time, who knows what could happen. So I think they're going to run it back. But I said all that to say this. Guys like T. Higgins, Josh Allen, they're not going to see the light of day in free agency. Now, I do know that Danielle Hunter has a no tag clause in his contract, so he can't be franchise tagged, which is what I thought a lot of these running backs were going to do. And they didn't. I'm shocked. Because if you reworked your 1-year deal, instead of the franchise tag, you signed an actual 1-year deal. I thought part of that would have been, hey, don't do this shit again next year. We're not doing this song and dance again. Because what I've learned is that second tag, which I should have known from the Kirk Cousins situation, is really not that much more money. A lot of times it's like $3 or $4 more million the next year if you use the tag a second year. So it's not like you, oh my God, it went from $15 million on the tag this year to 24 next year. That's a big, huge jump. No, it's like it was 10 million for the running backs last year, and it's probably like 12 or 13 million if you tagged, Tony Pollard and Josh Jacobs and Saquon Barkley again. If you tag them again, it ain't but $13 million. Like, you would take that. Those guys are worth that much money for 1 year of service. So I thought they would have put that in their contract, but I said all of that to say this. Once again, A lot of those dudes you over there fawning over, and you got these ideas of grandeur in your head about these guys being available. A lot of these dudes ain't even going to hit free agency. Daniil Hunter will. I don't think he's coming here, though. I don't think he's coming here. Malik Taylor, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Malik writes, hey, Lou, would you trade with New England picking up another 2 draft, a tackle at 3 and trading back into the first and grabbing McCarthy to compete with Sam? No, I wouldn't do that. I want no parts of J.J. McCarthy. Again, I think earlier in the show, my guy JP, John Perez, called him Alex Smith 2.0. That is exactly what he is. Exactly what he is. I think he's Alex with a little bit more of a gunslinger mentality, though. Like he'll make some big time throws that Alex just wasn't willing to risk, but he's perfectly fine with just taking what's being given to him. And if all game long you play a soft too high shell, he'll just take the underneath stuff all game long, and he has no interest in pushing the envelope. You know, at some point you gotta try to get them out of that. And he's cool with taking just strictly what the defense gives him. And there's a time and a place for that. And then sometimes you got to challenge them. You got to push the envelope, right? Yeah, that's not really his thing. You know, he'll do that every now and again, but I'm good on that. You're at 2. There's no way you get out of there without Caleb Williams, Drake May, or Jaden Daniels. There's nothing else to talk about. No other scenario will do. You know, only thing else I could think of is you love all 3 of the quarterbacks all the same, and you don't have a preference, and New England does, and they'd be willing to move up just to get their guy, and they'd be willing to move up a spot, and you can get some draft capital in the process and still get one of the 3 quarterbacks. Okay, fine. That's the only trade I'm entertaining. The only trade. And you suggested trading with New England, moving back a spot, but it's not for a tackle. It's for a quarterback. You'd still take a quarterback there in that scenario. You'd just be picking up more draft capital to do so. And again, if I'm New England, I'm not giving you Nathan. I'm going to just sit there and take whatever's left. Again, and it has to be that you love all of the options available to you. If you don't, then you can't. All right. Video channel. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you, video channel. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, "Sup, Lou? Did you see McVay hired a game management coordinator to help with clock and timeouts? I think every team should have one." I agree with you. I don't understand why all teams don't have one of those. Some teams already had guys that were in control of that. I don't know if they had a distinct title, but if that's not your strong suit, like some coaches are good at that stuff, and they don't need somebody telling them when to call a timeout, when to let the clock run, when you should call your first timeout, should you use your timeouts on defense, et cetera, et cetera. Like some coaches just struggle with the mathematics of it. Some coaches struggle with less versus more. Like the coaches that let 24 seconds run off the clock to the 2-minute warning and then use their timeouts after the 2-minute warning. Like that's the dumbest shit ever. Like make it make sense that you just let 24 seconds bleed off the clock so that you could use your timeouts on the other side of the 2-minute warning. Call your timeouts before the 2-minute warning, and you have more time if you get the stop, not less time. Anyway, every team that struggles with clock management, or your coach knows that might overwhelm them during the course of a game, should have one of those. It's not hard. They make up all these positions for coaches that's their boy, that a senior defensive advisor, right? Like what? Man, if you don't get somebody that has a title that matters, that should be on every staff, like you just mentioned. I don't understand. If you struggle with game and clock management, then you should have a guy that, from an analytics standpoint, does nothing but analyze the statistics and understands exactly what you should be doing in every single scenario. And it should change from week to week. Hey, the Dolphins have the #1 scoring offense before the half. So if we use our timeouts aggressively to get the ball back and then we go 3 and out, they're the best in the league at scoring before the half. So maybe we should think about being a little conservative this week. Okay, cool. Conversely, the Browns have the worst scoring defense before the half. We should be aggressive here using our timeouts to get the ball back because their defense in the last 2 minutes of the first half this season is the worst statistically in the league. So we should be aggressive using our timeouts. That's the kind of shit that person should be doing every single week. I don't understand. This league, you got all this money, you spend it on all this shit. And to me, more games are lost on a weekly basis because of mangling the clock, not managing timeouts, not knowing when to throw the challenge flag. More games are lost because of little subtle things like that week in and week out. And you don't have somebody that specializes in that? Make it make sense. I don't understand it. Anyway, I digress. Let's see. Get to a few more comments and then we'll move on. Red Wings 01 writes, I don't begrudge a player who has nothing to gain like Caleb or MHJ not testing, but I'll always think higher of someone who does. Sometimes it feels like it's all about money in this era. And you know what? I get that to a degree. Like, I know, for instance, in this particular draft, Rome Odunze has already said, nah, I'm working out at the combine. I love it. Like, again, it goes back to what Mike Mayock used to say. I just want guys that want to compete. Just come out here and compete. It's what you've been doing your entire life. Now that you're this close to the finish line, you don't want to compete now all of a sudden? Man, why? But I know why. I can answer that question, but I just want guys that want to compete. I just want guys that want to compete. Steel City, right? So, Lou, my only disagreement with your quarterback rankings is Bo Nix over Penix. Penix outplayed Nix in head-to-head twice, and also is a huge part of why his squad made the championship game. See, I disagree with that take. I don't think he necessarily outplayed Bo Nix in both of those games. I do think he outplayed Nix in the first game in the regular season. I don't think he outplayed him in the playoff in the Pac-12 championship. If that kicker doesn't miss that kick to send the game to overtime, I think the Oregon Ducks are going to win that game. I really, truly do. I really, truly do. But when it's all said and done, like the first game, Penix took his team down the field and scored that touchdown with, seconds left or whatever, 30, whatever, 40, whatever second. Like, he made it happen. That second one, though, I thought Bo Nix took his team down and did what he needed to do to give them a chance. And unfortunately, the kicker missed. So, I like Michael Penix Jr. too. The injuries are what probably, pushed him back a little bit. And then the inability to extend plays and make plays off schedule, like that's damn near essential in today's NFL, unless you're extraordinary from the pocket, which he has a chance to be. But like the Texas first half, we saw Michael Penix Jr. be surgical from the pocket. If that's who he is at the next level, then I got no issues with his inability to extend plays and playoff schedule. But because that means he's turning into, a Tom Brady, Drew Brees, Phillip Rivers type. Okay. All right. I can deal with that. But if that's not who you're going to be, I got a problem with that. I got a serious problem with that. So that's why I have Bo Nix, because Bo can extend, Bo can make plays. And I think people don't give Bo enough credit for his arm talent as well. It took me a long time to get to this place where I can speak so candidly and in a positive manner about Bo Nix. This just happened about 2 weeks ago. Okay. So it took a lot on my part to get to where I am right now. I'm proud of myself. Red Wing says Cam Hayward won this year, and in the year before that, Andrew Whitworth won. So yes. And then yes, Hero Gasm was the name of that damn episode. That shit was disgusting. That was a trifling ass episode, and I was absolutely disgusted with what I was watching. I'm like, I'm never watching this shit again. So you got me. My hands are up. I don't want no more of the boys. The name of the show is The Boys, and the one episode I watched, it was a lot of boys on boys. I'm good. I am good. Man. Command the Field says Commander's Log episode, season 4, episode 1 dropped today. Loved every minute. I got that shit on the computer right now, queued up. It's 21 minutes long. I was gonna watch it before the podcast. I only had like 16 minutes left before the pod was supposed to start. I thought it was gonna be one of those 13-minute episodes, something like that. So I was like, I'm gonna watch it real quick. I revved the engine up and went through the ad, and I got through the ad, and then the amount of time in the episode show, I was like, oh shit, this is a movie. Okay, this is an episode. Like, this is like watching a 30-minute show, with the commercials is 22 minutes. This is a real show. Okay, I'll save it for after the podcast. So I haven't watched it yet, but trust and believe, I'm going to watch it, and then I'm going to break it down. I'm going to have a video that I release tomorrow for you guys, talking about this first episode. You know how I like to do. I always like to break down these Commander Log episodes. So you'll probably get a video from me tomorrow after I have a chance to sit down and watch it. VT Soldier 2010 writes, the new Commander's Log came out today, Louie. It's outstanding. Lots of behind the scenes from the AP and Quinn hires, plus some really interesting footage from the Senior Bowl. Yeah, I'm gonna dive in. Don't you worry. And I'll have my analysis of the episode tomorrow. So there will be a video out for that. So check it out. Red Wing 01 writes, I get it. The Boys definitely isn't for everyone. Count me in that group as not for everyone. He says, it's raunchy, it's grotesque, but the Hero Gasm episode is the biggest offender, LOL. And that happened to be the only episode I've ever seen. So that by nature was the one that I probably didn't need to see. And I saw it and I was like, oh, I cannot do this. He says, it's more than that. The writing and the acting is top notch. And I've heard nothing but good things about the show, by the way. Everybody, to a man, including yourself, have had nothing but great things to say. I just know what I know, and I know what I saw. And I'm like, you would have to have roped me in first before you introduced me to that bullshit. And by the time I already got locked in, now I can't turn back. You can't expose me to that first and then be like, but hey, every episode's not like that. How am I supposed to know? Like, I'm like, wait a minute. That's like somebody inviting you to a party. You walk in and it's all kinds of shit going on at the party. And you talk to somebody after the party and they're like, yo, every party's not like that. In my mind, me and my wife are not coming back to any more of these parties. No matter what you tell me, they're not all like this. Okay, you say so. I'm good. I don't need to see another one of these things. So, yeah. Red Wing 01 says, if you want a less gross show, I'd recommend Invincible. Isn't that a cartoon? Is that the cartoon one? Says, I can't guarantee you'll like the missus with your missus will like it, but it's worth a watch. I don't know. Is that the cartoon one? I might be tripping. It may not be the cartoon one. Anyway. RHS Chess writes, begging Adam Peters to sign Dalton Schultz, ex-Cowboy, pretty young, solid tight end, doesn't cost a lot. I think, and I talked about this on the last podcast episode, I think the Texans are going to franchise tag him. It's not going to cost them a lot of money. Just like everything you just said. He's still young. He was a huge part of their team last year. If they can't agree to a deal that makes sense for both sides, it doesn't cost a lot to franchise tag tight ends. He's been franchise tagged before. He probably won't like it, but guess what? He'll have to deal with it. He was a huge safety net for CJ Stroud last year. I would imagine they'd want him back. That's just a guess. They may say, nah, we're good. We can draft us a tight end. They may feel that way, but we'll see. All right. So let's get to garbage time. So I think I talked about a couple of the topics that I was going to knock down at garbage time, but I'll say this. I said this on the video that I uploaded today, but I'll make it abundantly clear that there are no offensive tackle prospects. If you're a Commanders fan in particular, there are no offensive tackle. Oh, I know what I wanted to talk about. I can save that conversation for another day. Did you guys see that one of the NFL EV executives, like executive vice president of, football policy or some shit like that, one of these dudes publicly said, he denounced the hip drop tackle, and he said, we are going to do everything in our power to outlaw that tackle this offseason. I said, what is the NFL coming to? How are you supposed to get guys on the ground? The people that complain the most about are the ones that have never played football before. I get it. You want to make the game safer, yada, 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 this, that, and the third. The horse collar, yep, I get it. Okay. I get the horse collar. But the hip drop is not the horse collar tackle. And some guys are just hard to bring down without dropping your weight down to tackle them. It's just, if you catch a dude that's 40 pounds heavier than you, how are you supposed to get him on the ground? If you don't come from an angle that allows you to grab his legs or grab him by the waist and twist him down, how are you supposed, if you're up high and this is the only way to get him down without him dragging you 5, 6 extra, how are you supposed to get him on the ground? And not every hip drop, I hate that they gave it a name, because when you give something a name, you give it a face and you make it easier to vilify, right? I hate that somebody came up with a name for this bullshit, because now it's got a face. Now we have a way to villainize the tackle. It's bullshit, by the way. But I'll say this. It's going to happen. And I'm telling you right now, you're going to hate this shit, because it's a subjective call. But so many of these tackles happen in the course of a game. And I'm telling you, it's going to happen at the most inopportune time. Guys, it's a 3rd and 5. If they get the first down, the game's over. If you get a stop, you get the ball back to have a chance to win. And somebody's going to make this tackle trying to keep a guy a yard or 2 short of the first down. And they're going to throw this stupid ass flag, and it's going to cost the team a game. And people are going to be pissed off. You can't hit guys high. You can't horse collar. Now you can't, use your weight as a weapon, which is crazy to me. And when I say you weaponize your weight, all you're doing is using that for good. You're not trying to injure anybody. You're just trying to get guys on the ground. And unfortunately, sometimes guys' legs or things of that nature get caught underneath them when you tackle them in that manner. But there are way more instances of those exact tackles happening and everybody getting up and walking back to the huddle than there are of those instances like Mark Andrews last year where he breaks his ankle. There are far less of those and more instances where everybody gets up and walks back to the huddle. But now we're going to penalize all of them. Shit is dumb, man. But what are you going to do? I mean, this is the NFL. This is the new day and age in the NFL. It's a new world order. Brave new world out there. You got to adjust. So they're going to outlaw that tackle. If you don't outlaw that tackle, then while you're at it, why don't you get rid of the damn brotherly shove? Why don't you get rid of that bullshit? This ain't rugby. Get rid of that shit. You'll leave that in the game, but you'll take out using your weight to get guys on the ground. That shit is stupid to me. Anyway, I digress. Red Wings 01. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Red Wings 01 writes, I think, is this a double up for you? I don't think it is, but I could be tripping. It's not. Says, yeah, the cartoon Invincible ain't no kid show. I know it ain't a kid show. I've seen previews of it. I just wasn't sure if I had the right title or not. But I knew, I thought, I can't say I knew. I thought it was the cartoon show. But I had somebody else tell me to check that out. I think I'm going to actually sit down, maybe really watch the trailer and see if it's something I can get with, because I heard it's a really good show. So anyway, I digress. That's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on the 399th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. So that means the next time that I see you, we're turning the big 400. That first number will start with a 4. Wow. It's been a long time. And you know what's crazy is there's probably another, I don't know, 75 to 125 podcast episodes that I had done before we switched over to this format. And the Louie T Network podcast, it used to be the In the Lab Room podcast. So I'm probably closer to 500, or 550 or something like that in the podcast department. But for this one, 400, pretty damn good. Pretty damn good, to say the least. I appreciate y'all coming along on this journey and ride with me. It's been so much fun. Anyway, I digress. That's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on the Louie T Network podcast. I thank you guys for joining me. I look forward to chopping it up with you guys next time. I'm hoping that it'll be on Wednesday. And that's the goal right now. We'll see if everything kind of fits into the schedule. But we will continue on the Draft Prospects 101 series. You guys spoke loud and clear. It was a runaway favorite for the offensive tackle position. So we started with that position today. We will continue with that tomorrow. And we will continue to run through those and then hopefully break those down by week's end. And then head into the combine weekend and knock that out, and then continue to forge forward. And remember, once we knock down the combine, we get even that much closer to the start of the new league year, which is free agency. And so life's about to come at you fast. Don't you blink. Life comes at you fast. So I'll keep you abreast of everything as it happens. But until next time, y'all know what it is. Y'all take care. God bless. Good night.